Hello, everyone. We're getting things set up and here to get started here in the next couple of minutes. A couple people are hopping on, so we're right at 7:15. So I'm just going to give a few more minutes through here just to make sure everyone has gotten on. And as you're coming in, just letting everybody know we had attempted to set the mute as you come in, just so we can make sure that no background noise hits everybody, because initially, and I might say this again if others come on, Meg and I are going to start our deep dive and record our content, and then at the end we'll end our recording and then open up for anyone to come in a discussion. So for the first part, it'll just be me and Meg, so you can just sit back, relax, and listen to us. We will pay attention to the chat. So if you have, it didn't look like any questions were emailed in. So if you have any questions as we go through this, feel free to type them in the chat and we'll look to include them in our discussion as we go. So glad you're all here. Meg, anything from you? I think we may be good to go.
Yeah, no, welcome everybody. This is our first one, so we are super excited to do a deep dive, and it's always fun to chat with you, Erin. So It's like, damn, we're going to talk about all the things we love, and this, so it's awesome.
Yeah, we're taking our phone calls live.
Yeah.
So yeah, excited to have you. For those of you who haven't met one or the other of us, I'm Erin Hines. I'm one of the co-founders and owners at Lifeline Solutions. I'm a therapist there. And then Meg, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Meg Magnuson, and I work at Lifeline. I'm a therapist and a health coach, but primarily working now on more of the coaching sphere with the Live Well wellness programs.
Yeah, so this is a vision of ours to provide more education and more coaching around issues that people may be working to implement in their life. So this is the opportunity for us to bring in information that maybe you've heard, hey, have you read this book? Have you listened to this? We're working to compile information and bring this in a format to where maybe you get to hear some of the snapshots of all this information and begin to be more curious about either learning more or how you can apply these things in your life. So tonight, habits. Where we start, habits. How do we start doing the things that we want to do to better our life? This can be hard. Why are habits, getting habits started so hard, Meg?
Well, yeah, I think we'll dive into that, but I think the thing for me about habits, because it can have such a, it's a word that's passed around so much. I think maybe not as, I don't know, it doesn't stick anymore to us. We're like, oh, habit, I know I need to do all the things, but really, I feel like habits have become the foundation for anything that we're going to talk about in Live Well, or just anything that goes on in our lives. Like when we were talking the other day, I feel like habits, if you're in a state of crisis or trauma or high stress, like having those things in place, especially when we don't want to do them, that provides a sense of security and stability for us, right, in the hard moments. But say you're in a season where you are feeling kind of, things are going well, you're feeling safe and secure. Habits are kind of that sustainable place to keep you in there. Or maybe you want to do things that, I don't know, maybe like enhance your life, like just doing more things that feel joyful or playful or, feel a little bit healthier or energetic or whatever it is. Like habits get us to that place too. So I feel like no matter where you are on this spectrum, I think habits really is the foundation to do any of that.
Yes. And to that point, when they become automatic, it's our go-to. We know what to do to take care of ourselves, to treat ourselves well. And so the way to do that is to practice these helpful modalities until they become that go-to second nature automatic response. And sometimes when we're not thinking our best.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If it's okay if I share the story, it's, you know, recently, like when I was in time of like a kind of a big crisis, it's habits that really kind of served as the anchors, right? It's like, what do I need to take care of myself? I know this is going to be an extended kind of hard season. So what's going to help me feel grounded? And it really was, I love a good tracker. There we can dive into the like how you even sustain habits, and we'll go there. But was the showing up in the morning before the day started, and doing some breath work or meditation. Like that was the first thing that I just needed to commit to, something very small that just felt grounding. And that has, kind of like exploded. And it goes into that whole idea of like James Clear, I love Atomic Habits, where it's like the 2-minute rule, do just something really small, right? And so yeah, like habits can be like that, or they're, like you said, just having the glass of water by your bed when you wake up and having that be a habit, or having the shoes by the door to go on the walk. I mean, it's like you can do so many things with habits. And I pulled this for those that are on the Live Well. I had a stat in here somewhere where it says 40% of our life is actually through habits. Like that's quite a bit. And we get to choose like what that looks like. So I feel like in that part, we get a lot of agency over what our habits can be.
Yes, yes. And just expanding, when you said the shoes by the bed or the 2 minutes, I mean, those are the things that really, I believe, helped me when, as I mean, I think I've asked you to start 2 habit challenges to help me get habits started in 2 different years, because maybe we have some good habits and then something comes along, like you were saying personally in your life, that knocks you off, or for all of us collectively, the pandemic. I mean, I had really gotten a good morning practice routine of walking and installed from some of your previous work on habit challenges. And then it's like things shift and change and our schedules are different or our attention's different. And so sometimes, getting back to things that were good for us, we can remind ourselves by some of those cues, like, where it becomes, I'm just going to put my shoes on in the morning and be better suited to be more likely to go out the door and walk. Or if I have the glass of water by the bed, I'm more likely to go ahead and drink it first thing. So setting up those reminders to let our brain remember what it is that we intend to do to take care of ourselves, because otherwise it's so easy to get pulled and distracted by the other things that we face. And I know we're talking some about morning here. I don't know if, you're good to go into the importance of a morning routine some, because that's been something I've really been doing a lot of listening and reading about right now, because the morning is so important. I don't know if you want to add on that, but for me, I tell my clients all the time, really the morning is when we wake up is the only thing we have the most measures of control about. Like we can set our clocks and we can get out of bed. We don't know what might hit us later in the day. We don't know what twists and turns our day might take, but our morning, and most people, when they're interviewed and who are the successful people, what are they doing? There's a lot of talk about the importance of that morning routine, as you were speaking about as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, we could spend all day doing a morning routine. And I think that's sometimes how it's shown, like, oh, you do all these things, but it doesn't take a lot, really. It could be like, again, like a glass of water by your bed, maybe something that feels, maybe break it down into like the mind, body, spirit, like something that feels good for your mind and body and spirit. So for me, it's a little bit of listening to like a guided meditation, because I mean, like I am still a little sleepy in the morning, right? So I was like, before I get out of bed, I'll have my cup of water, and then I'm a coffee drinker. So then my coffee's brewing, and then I'll go and listen to meditation, have my cup of coffee, And then I'll try to move a little bit. So it might be a short run, a walk, a stretch, just a little something. And recently I heard something I really like in the mornings before you even get out of bed is really just even setting the intention for the day. Like, how do I want to show up today? Right? Or like what, or, waking up and having it be, what is something that I'm feeling grateful for in the moment, right? Rather than rolling out of bed and thinking of all the things you have to do or the things you already were, like rather than going straight into that and hustling, bustling, and get in the shower and, hauling the kids to get them to school or whatever, racing off to work. It's like slowing down. What do I want to bring to this day? What's something that is bringing me joy or I'm really thankful for? How can I take care of my body? Um, and how can I kind of send signals to my brain and body that, you know, it's okay, like today is good. Even when things aren't good, it's like we've grounded ourselves in that already, and we can go back to that. Um, so yeah, I feel like morning routines are really pivotal in how a day can play out, right? Like I even know for myself, if I'm sick for a few weeks and I miss some of that, I notice how I am. I notice how I show up at work. I notice how I show up in relationships. I know how my body, like, so I think having those small habits, they're little anchors. And then we can do it all throughout the day. Like I say, we can have different habits in the transitions in our day. We can have, the bedtime habits, I think, are just as important as the morning habits, like how we wind down for bed. Do we, there's all the talk about the blue light, but like, do we get off the screens? Do we find ways to calm our body? Again, like when you lay down in bed, what are we telling ourselves? Could our habit be, this is something that was well and good today? Rather than, oh, I didn't do this, or I wish I wouldn't have said that to that, how we can beat ourselves up, but like have a habit of like, how do I speak kindly to myself in the evening before I go to bed, right? And allow myself to
Yeah.
fall asleep with those thoughts rather than, watching something stressful or beating up on ourselves for something we didn't do. Like, that's the thing, like we can have that agency, how we shape all of those pieces.
Yes, that just makes me think about the recent interview with Hal Elrod on Kathy Heller, which was amazing. Miracle Morning is his book, and that's my newest purchase. But talks so much about this. But one of the things that you just said that made me think was the last thing we go to bed thinking about is going to be the first thing we wake up thinking about. So yes, if all we're doing while we're laying there going to bed is dread and anxiety and fear and rehashing or criticizing or beating up what we should or said or didn't do, what are we waking up with? Fear, anxiety, dread, anticipation negatively about who we're going to face and how it's going to go. So it's like, how do we clean out that at bedtime and purify that in a way in the morning time to where it's like we're bringing fresh new goodness to show up into our day our best. And I mean, that's quite a process that's, hard to be able to do sometimes when things are stressful. But, I think that one of the key things that can work for some people is, again, back to reminders. I tell people a lot of my suggestion, like for instance, going to bed, you mentioned, set your alarm to go to bed. We only think about setting an alarm to wake up, but when your phone can give you that reminder 30 minutes before your bedtime, it's time, so that you can disengage from whatever things you might be engaged in and start mentally preparing for rest. And I think part of the dilemma is sometimes we don't value ourselves enough, but definitely we don't value rest enough. And, cultivating that practice of rest, which is essential to set us up for the morning, because if we're tired and not sleeping enough, then you're not going to have what you need to be able to do your morning. And so knowing that your rest is as important as whatever you're doing when you're awake, I think is really important too, because that's missed a lot.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I mean, thanks for sharing also that resource, that idea, like what we carry to bed, we wake up with. I'm gonna be thinking about that tonight now when I go to bed. I think that's a good reminder for all of us. And I wonder, if it'd be helpful right now is to talk about then, like I think about the people that I've heard or talked to about habits, about why is it so frustrating, or what are some of the hard pieces when it comes to starting a habit? Right? Like we know what to do, like we think we know what to do, or we think we have a habit in mind, but getting from point A to point B can be a really frustrating point for some people. So what do you think or like what have you heard in terms of some of the barriers people have for starting a habit? Or what have some been for
Yeah.
you personally?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think delaying in many ways is, often it's like, um, when this happens, then I'll do that. There's a lot of waiting until something else, like waiting for the right time. Um, I need to quit smoking before I can be a runner, is something, for instance, I might hear a lot. And I'm like, well, you could start running and then maybe you smoke less after you realize it's affecting your running. So I think a lot of times we create these, I must do one thing before I can do another. When my kids are older, when they don't need me as much at bedtime, when I don't have to do so that's a big one that I hear a lot about. And personally one, I think that, when I feel better, this is a stressful season. How could I possibly start a habit during the holidays? I need to wait to the first of the year. You and I were talking about that the other day, how many people wait to the first of the year to do something and miss a whole half of the year waiting on January, because January is the time to start the habit. It's like now is the time. There's no reason to not start today, just like with the Miracle Morning. I just started that 30-day challenge Monday, because I mean, you can, any day is a good day to say, for the next 30 days, I'm going to try this, process and see what that does for me. When we had the habit challenge, a few Mays ago, it's like, we're just going to do a 10-day, like, I'm going to try something. And I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in needing to do it the right way, the right time, and the right conditions. Is the weather right for this habit? Instead of just saying, I'm going to do it now and I'm going to see how it goes. It's not something that you have to know 100% about before you do it.
Right, right. The ability to just start imperfectly, I think.
Mhm.
I think another trap that we can easily fall in, and this is kind of similar, is the all or nothing. And I either need to be all in and do it all right, and it's got to be big, or it's
Mhm.
nothing, right? Like I'm going to walk 30 minutes 5 times a day, or 5 times a day. That would be a lot. Okay, 5 times a week. And if we miss a day or maybe there's a day where we can only get 15, we don't do it at all, right? And so I
Yeah.
think realizing, okay, I'd like to do, it's okay to be disappointed. Like I'd like to do 30 minutes, but you know what? I only have 10 minutes this morning because I have to get to work early, but I'm going to take the 10 minutes really, and just being able to
Yeah.
appreciate. So getting rid of that all or nothing, ideally, like I would love to sit for a 15, 20-minute meditation. Sometimes all I can do is like 3 deep breaths, but I still think it's the art of showing up for yourself. Like I think it's being able to fit, and you're making a commitment to yourself that you're still going to show up. And those 3 breaths, like they still matter. The 10 minutes of the walking, it still matters. And
Yes,
I
it
think,
all adds up,
yeah, yeah.
the
And it
positive or the negative.
sorry. I was gonna say it ties in with another barrier that I think sometimes this is another big James Clear advice is habit overload, and piggybacking off of that would be starting too big,
Mm.
right? And so the idea of like, we may get excited about something we've heard or learned. I mean, I am definitely one of those people. So we want to change all the things, right? Like, I'm going to clean up my fridge, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start the sleep routine. I'm going to go to bed about an hour earlier, and I'm going to run 5 days a week, and I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to do this in my relation, whatever it is, because we want to feel better. We want to feel different, and we're excited about it. But what happens is we take on too much, and then it overwhelms our systems. And if if we feel like a failure or we miss something, then it feels demoralizing. And then it kind of is, we feel reinforced of like, well, see, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The inner critic, the perfectionist. I mean, those are parts of us that come in and destroy us in that way. I'm not good enough because I couldn't even meet my goal. And so, like I said, if the goal's too big, you're setting yourself up for some ways to have that situation. But it's definitely, sorry, I just saw somebody pop in the weight room. I was trying to add in, but yes, sorry, distraction.
Yeah.
Welcome, new person in the weight room. I hope you weren't waiting there too long. So Meg and I are here sharing and talking.
Yeah, habit overload or starting too big. And I
Yeah.
think this is one of my, if I could really give any type of maybe even just wisdom of my own experience, but what I've really gleaned from habit experts is trust in the power of small.
Mm.
Because one, being able to show, it's one, we just have to create the habit of showing up before we can expand on the habit, right? Like another really good resource is BJ Fogg's, who wrote Tiny Habits. And I think it was in his book where he was like, not a flosser, right? He's like, I hated flossing my teeth. And he tried to do different habits, but he's like, if I could just commit to flossing one tooth, right? Like, that's it, one tooth, like no excuses, one tooth. And that's all he would allow himself to do, but he just created the habit of doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to commit to the habit of 3 breaths in the morning, or 5-minute walk, like something small, so that you develop, like you're giving again a signal to yourself, like, I am someone who shows up for this, right? Like, I care about my health, so I'm going to do this walk. Like, I'm someone who cares about how I physically, mentally, emotionally feel, whatever your habit is, right? And being able to trust, I think this is such a connection I would love for people to make is, when people are really struggling, they're like, Meg, how does a glass of water, like, because there's always just those memes and jokes like, everything's wrong, drink a glass of water, right? But I'm like, those things really actually do matter. I mean, they might matter physiology. I tried twice, guys.
Physiologically.
Thank you. But those small habits, again, they matter, and they expand. And sometimes we know this idea of keystone habits. You might have one habit, say you start creating a sleep habit, right? So your new habit is an hour before bed, I'm off all of my screens, right? And that habit allows you to sleep a little bit deeper, right? And then the next habit that follows is, well, because I'm sleeping better, I can wake up a little bit earlier now, right? So we wake up a little bit earlier, then we create a new habit. Okay, I'm waking up a little bit earlier. And so what do I want to do with that extra 15, 20 minutes in the morning? Do I want to do a few stretches? Do I want to listen or read something that feels good for my mind? Do I just want to do I just want to, sit outside and be still? And then that creates another habit. So now we're feeling more grounded or something. And then, it snowballs, it's a keystone. So I think, but just trusting in the small, you can make one tiny change at night. And just if you can trust that can impact another habit and then another habit. Like, our life is made up of so many of these micro moments.
Yes. And, just thinking while I was listening to you, some of the, other barriers that I think prevent us from prioritizing that is, you know, I don't know about everyone else on this call, but, you know, think about, I mean, when I think about my own experience, what did I see my parents doing to take care of their selves? You know, a lot of times we're not in an environment where the people around us know all the things we know now and maybe didn't do all the things that were important, you know? And so if we don't have that model for taking care of ourselves, it's just so easy to make something else more important. And many of us, I think, culturally in the South, it's taking care of others that becomes this, you know, what we're handed down to do. And so taking care of self is seen as selfish and to a lot of people. You know, I hear that a lot from clients. Well, if I don't do this, I'm selfish. If I go to this yoga class when I was supposed to be with my kid on Saturday morning, then I'm selfish. Well, not if your preservation of yourself helps you be a better mom the other 23 hours of that day. You know, so I mean, I just think that there's a lot of ways that we disregard ourselves and don't see the importance of these habits and taking care of ourselves as having as much value as it really does. That and the other one I thought of was like not enough time. I mean, the illusion that there's never enough time for anything. And there is 24 hours in a day, and there is time for more self-care, depending on how we divide that up. And, you know, I think that, you know, those are just two things that come up a lot that people might experience that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so good. I mean, you're right. Thinking about my own family and habits, I'm not even sure. I mean, that was never part of a discussion, right? Like I can't even think about that. And the idea
I
of,
do remember my mom going to a jazzercise class sometimes at the church, and I remember that sometimes when I'm thinking about exercise. It wasn't regular, but I remember it.
yes. Yeah, jazzercise. But yeah, I think having a reframe is really important. So the reframe of when we can invest in ourselves, we're actually able to invest in others better, right? Like it gives us a sense of rest or energy or whatever that is doing for us. And I also always like to reiterate, we're also modeling. I think when we can set up good habits and self-care for ourselves, we are giving people permission by watching us. Oh, I can do that too. But if they're watching us always just beat ourselves to the ground, you know, if we just talk with a workload, then they feel guilty, right? Taking care of themselves or having habits that, you know, are life. So I also think in terms of like, what are we modeling to others, to our family, to our community, to our coworkers or whoever it is. I think being able to show up and, you know, yeah, just be the model and giving them permission of like, yeah, this is awesome. You get to do it too, you know? And I think it kind of releases us from that shame and guilt.
Yes, yes. And even if we overcome all those barriers, I mean, this might have been said initially, but I just think of the fear. Like I can remember the first yoga class that I attended probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe now. And the fear of I'm going to go to this different place, do this different thing. I have no idea how to do it. I don't know. I'm not an expert at this. And so, you know, the fear of trying something new for either looking stupid or failure or whatever that is that we do to ourselves. And, you know, so I think that that's one of the reasons, one of the main reasons why Live Well exists is that, you know, to hope that people can find a safe entry into self-care practices in a setting that they can feel comfortable in developing and growing some of these habits and practices that they may be curious about and don't even know where to start. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does take courage, especially if it's something like that of going into a yoga class and feeling like, what if, but creating, I think, yeah, a safe place where we can just be and, a non-judgmental, like where we say just show up, we're imperfectly, like we do all these habits imperfectly. And I think being able to do that and also lean on each other, like what works for you may not work for another person, but I think being able to share each other's wisdom and experiences can also be really helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can we talk some about this? I just saw a note. When a person starts a new habit and then there's that period where they're not feeling like they're seeing a result. So I'm practicing my breathing and resetting my nervous system every morning for a month, and I just had a panic attack. Or I've been walking every day for 3 months and I am still the same shape of body. Whatever that is, like I don't see the result and I want to quit what I'm doing good for myself because it's not yielding the exact result I was planning for. As a coach, what do you offer that individual?
Yeah. Well, my initial thought is to kind of hold those habits loosely and to be able to pivot. I know some people who meditation works really well for them. And I know some people who really do not like meditation. Maybe it makes them feel more anxious or panicky. Some people really like to walk or run. Some people like yoga and some people don't. So I think, again, just being curious about, is this the right habit for me? Or is it just something that someone suggested, probably with great intention, right? Because it's worked for them, or, has some great research behind it, say what you will. But being able to say, like, what are my values? What is it that I really want? And is this habit in alignment with that? And I've tried it and it's not working. It doesn't mean that I'm broken. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with me. Maybe it's just not the right habit for me. And so say I'm trying meditation for 30 days and I just had a panic. Well, meditation is not necessarily going to stop panic attacks, right? Maybe though, if that person was overlooking the last 30 days, am I feeling less anxious overall? Am I having fewer panic attacks? Is it easier for me to feel more grounded and get in my body? Or maybe my body shape's not changing, but do I have more energy? Do I feel better emotionally because maybe I'm outside? Or do I feel better because maybe I'm walking with a friend and I'm feeling more connected? So maybe, I think being able to just be more curious about what the habit is serving and not serving. And then I would also say, okay, maybe I want something that changes my body shape. Maybe walking I like for certain reasons, but it's not the right thing. So maybe I explore something else, right? Like maybe there's something I want to do that I haven't tried yet. Maybe it is some sort of strength training, or maybe it is a yoga, or maybe it's cycling or swimming. I mean, it could be anything. There's all the ways we can move our body. Same with the panic attack. Like meditation doesn't work. What are other ways if what I'm wanting to feel is safe, or calming the body, what is it that I could do? So maybe, I love sounds. Like I love using sounds to send signals to turn my parasympathetic on, to tell me I'm safe, right? To calm my body down. So maybe your habit is you create a playlist of things that feel good to you. It could be nature sounds. It could be singing bowls, wind chimes. There's like on Insight Timer, there's like that thing called, you've heard of white noise, although there's like pink noise, things like that. And you create a list. And so maybe you just listen to that 5 minutes a day, or maybe you hum, or maybe you move your body. So I think being able to pivot the habit and play around with it. And again, like lose the judgment, like it's not working for me, something's wrong with me, rather than be like, maybe it's just not the right habit. Maybe I just need to pivot.
Yeah. Yes. So what other um, questions and feel free, again, anyone to put any questions in here. I'm taking a peek at our notes that we wanted to make sure we touch on just to see if there's anything else we wanted to add in. I mean, I know several, if you've mentioned James Clear a lot. Atomic Habits is his book, The Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. If some of you may have read it, you can also, search on Spotify, such his name, because he's been interviewed a lot. But, I think his words that he talks about a lot are making any habit obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. And, when I hear you say, is the habit right for you? Or if we're trying to figure out what it's not working, thinking about, some of his work is really kind of around honing in. I think about you and your health coaching. And when we were working around nutrition and adding in nutrition, one of his things is, what do you see in your kitchen? If what food is lying around. And, you worked with me, and others a lot about, having the bowl of fruit, having the frozen blueberries accessible instead of the jelly beans, or, how do you make quick, easy grabs for things that are attractive and obvious and easy to reach. And the easier it might be in our physical reach, the easier it might be in our reach of awareness to do those things that are good for us. I mean, any other things around that I'm not thinking of that I know you've shared about that can help make that habit attractive?
Yeah. I love James Clear's advice.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the part about the environmental design. And I think that is a really big deal when we think about creating habits. I think it's him that he says it, maybe it's BJ Fogg, but it's like, make it so easy you can't say no. And I think being able to create and design the way you want your habits to look. So say, even if it's, for example, sorry, I keep giving my own examples, but like, I know I want to meditate in the mornings, but like oftentimes now I'll put my stuff upstairs the night before because I listened to something. So I kind of already have some of that stuff in place. So I'm not fumbling through in the dark in the house, trying to find the things I need to listen to meditation in the morning. I suggest I also like to lay out the clothes the night before. So if I'm going to walk or run early in the morning, those things I do better. I'm more likely to follow through if all of that stuff is laid out, previously. And the same is with the food. Like if we're looking to change some of our eating habits, are we making it easy for ourselves? Or are we like the more friction there is for the habit, the harder it is going to be to have the habit in place. And so like you said, like having the fruit out or having the blueberries available makes it easier to make those kinds of choices, instead of the jelly beans. And he also has some really other good tricks that I think really help. So if you're looking to create a new habit, another really good one is habit stacking. So we already have habits in place. And this is when you can go back to the morning routine. Like even if you don't quite have a morning routine, you still have some routine. What does that look like for you? So again, like a lot of people might be coffee or tea drinkers in the morning. They might, do you have a habit of brushing your teeth or showering? We have some kind of habit, whatever that is. And what would you like to add to that you could put in front or after it? And I think being able to stack habits on top of each other makes it easier. One, it just makes it easier to remember, but it just kind of helps build a flow, right? So if my first habit was, I like to have a cup of coffee in the morning. And so the other habits have become, before I even get out of bed, I'm going to have a glass of water. It's by my bed. I wake up and it's already there, right? And then I'm going to listen to something while I have my coffee, right? And so that has been paired, or I may write a few gratitudes afterward. And so being able to pair and stack things together can be really helpful. And he also talks about another thing he talks about is temptation bundling. I don't know if you remember that part from his book, but say like, it's kind of like the carrot in front of us, like, okay, I really want to watch, I love listening to podcasts. And so it's like, okay, I really could listen to podcasts all day. But it was like, but if I want to take a habit, like maybe I need a walk, or there are habits that I need to do, pair it with that. So he talks about it, like you have a favorite Netflix show or something, watch that while you're, if you were walking on a treadmill, or just pairing things that you, kind of just being able to pair those things together, like the rewards with the habits, can also be really helpful when you're trying to start out. And I think one more piece he talks about is the accountability piece. And I think being able to figure out I like to ask the question, like when you have created habits in the past, or when you have maybe even had a goal. I'm always careful about the word goal because I don't know honestly how I feel about that. But when you have had a successful goal or a habit, why? Like what was in place? Like how did that work out for you? And being able to model some of those things. So was it that you had accountability because you had to show up for somebody else? Like maybe you were meeting someone to go on the walk or run, or you were meeting someone at the yoga class or whatever it is. Like how were you accountable? Like for me, sometimes I actually like trackers, like streaks. So sometimes I'm like, I don't want to break the streak. Like once you get to like day 5 or 6, you're like, ooh, I don't want to break that. Like I really want to try something for 21 days or 30 days or whatever it is. That's just how I'm wired. That's not for everybody. But I had this like little like the adult coloring pages, and you would just color off the little thing when I was trying to do something new. And for me, that worked. I've done both of those, like having a partner or having a tracker. They have apps. They have all we could use Live Well as a way for accountability and just cheering each other on. But I think also figuring out what would help keep me on track for that too.
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts, and you're saying that. I'm going to try to say them all. The walk, when you're talking about liking to listen to a podcast, sometimes if I wake up not excited to walk, I'm excited to listen to I ended the podcast midway yesterday, and when I go walk, I'm going to be able to finish listening to it. So it's like, I'm excited to walk, not just to walk, but also to listen to the rest of the podcast. Or I walk my dog first. So my dog's ready for me to walk. So even if I'm not ready to walk, you've got the accountability of your dog who's like, I need to walk. And so it's like, it helps get you out the door to pay attention to the other things that may be exciting about, the habit. So that, and then when we've talked about the cup of water, for those of you who haven't read How to Do the Work, which many of you on here maybe have, because I've been obsessed about telling everyone about it for the last 6 months after Meg reminded me that I still needed to read it. But she talks a lot about the glass of water. And I made a note to myself that, how can that be so important? But I always tell folks, air, water, movement, sun, those are our basic ingredients for growth. We are a big plant. It's like those things that we do to take care of ourselves. And if we just did those each day, got enough air, water, movement, sun, those things keep us in growing. So yes, and those, I just wanted to share. Anything else from you on any of that?
No, I can't.
I remember the third.
Yes.
You said no, so I'm going to take the third. When we move from I'm developing a habit of walking to I'm a walker, we move from I'm trying to meditate 30 days to I'm a meditator. Like, you know, I mean, it becomes not just this behavior that we're trying to do, but it becomes who we are. And I tell people a lot. I remember my son, and after I had felt like I'd mastered a practice of walking every day many years back, and I've been in a groove for most of his life he could remember. He drew a picture of me on a Mother's Day card or something, and I had like walking and gear and shoes and stuff on, tennis shoes. And I was like, you know, 5 years ago, I didn't own a pair of tennis shoes that I would go out and walk in. Like, I have moved my identity in a way that my son sees me as someone that's a walker, you know? So, I mean, I think at some point we shift from like not trying to do the thing, but being the thing.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's that quote, right, of like you're casting a vote each time you put the shoes on for the type of person you want to be. And I
Yeah.
think just giving giving ourselves that message, it's a vote of self-love, I feel like, not to sound cheesy, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I would say, I don't know if we're ready to wrap this part up, but if you are at a part where you're not sure what you want the habits to be, we also have this little, well, I guess one in the Live Well modules, but also in like this Live Well habit guide. You could go through this exercise of where you can do the visualization part, right? Where it's when you picture yourself in 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you do you, whatever it feels right for you. And you think about what you're doing. Like, how are you thriving? What does joy look like? What does health look like? What does energy look like? What does peace look like? Like, what habits, then you can ask yourself, like, what habits does the future me have in place that maybe I don't have right now? And then if you just scale back a little bit and you're like, what habits do I need to get in place to get there? Right? So maybe my future self is someone who just has a lot more energy, vibrancy, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm just sludging my way through the days. Okay, that's amazing. What small, one tiny habit could I put in place right now to help me get to that future me, right? Maybe it's the blueberries in the fridge. Maybe it's the glass of water. Maybe it's going to bed 30 minutes earlier. Like, I think being able to kind of visualize in that way can also be a really helpful exercise. And then you just scale it back. You may have a big habit, but remember, we got to scale it way down. Like, you got to make it really small in the beginning and just trust the process. I think that's a really big point. Just trust the process that these small habits really do help take you to where you want to go.
Tiny changes, remarkable results. That's the Atomic Habits tagline. And yes, and knowing that you are worth every moment of commitment to that, and that you are, that self-love piece is just so important, and can't do it without that. You can't do this in a punishing way. You must do this in a loving way, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yes, thanks, Meg. This was great to talk with you about this. And if you don't have any other things, I'm going to stop this recording and open up for questions and answers. If anybody wants to stick around, certainly not obligated, but Meg and I are here if anyone has any questions. I didn't see any posted, but